Hello, everyone. This is Tim Allen with the Massey Group at Compass. It's April 25th, 2025. This is your Q2 2025 real estate market update, primarily focused on Contra Costa County in the Bay Area. So the underlying theme of this update is uncertainty. Uncertainty caused primarily by the tariff situation, the trade war. Basically, if you remove tariffs, you remove the trade war, the economy is growing. Inflation was still stickier than expected, but being managed and coming down. But this uncertainty in the economy, generally uncertainty equals a lack of confidence. A lack of confidence really on the buy side or the demand side in real estate. Real estate's a big purchase, a lot of money involved, a lot of emotions, complicated transaction, a lot at stake. So if you're not confident in the future, you may pull back a little bit, and that's what we're seeing. So obviously we've seen the stock market reflected in this. Dow's down 6% since the beginning of the year, down 11% since the January high. S&P 500's down 7%, down about 10% since the February high. And the NASDAQ's down 11% since the beginning of the year, down 13% since February. Also looking at the 10-year Treasury yield, it's been, volatile short term, but, more or less stable in the low fours to mid fours, depending on what's going on from day to day, month to month. But with this uncertainty, really what we're looking at is kind of how long is it going to last? How long is it going to last? What's the eventual impact? What's the eventual end result on the end of this? And then are there any ancillary effects to the economy? So how is it affecting real estate? Well, really, inventory hasn't changed. And what I mean by that is new listings hitting the market. That number is really in line with, the 15-year average for the county. So if supply or inventory is relatively given, but we have a pullback on demand, what we're going to have is a leftover inventory month to month. The properties coming out aren't all being absorbed or sold from month to month, leaving leftover inventory. If that trend continues, that has the possibility of putting negative pressure on prices as inventory grows or potentially grows. So what do we, and let's look at the numbers real quick. Again, this is for Contra Costa County, just to illustrate, if we look at this month compared to the previous month, it's pretty good. The numbers suggest we're entering the, normal spring market. Properties for sale are up 23%. Those going into contract are also up 15%, but those being sold are only up 7%. So that's that signal of lack of inventory. But here's a little bit more shocking compared to last year. Inventory this month or this period, April 1st through April 24th, inventory is up 60%. Properties going into contract are down 4%, and properties being sold are down 10%. The numbers are pretty much the same for condos and townhouses, just a little bit softer. So what do you do with this information now in Q2 of 2025? Well, if we're working with the seller, one of the most important questions we want to ask the seller is there an option to keep the home? You have your catalyst or whatever's going on in your life that says, hey, this is the best time to sell my home. But if we put the property out there, most sellers have a goal price in mind. If we put the property out there, we market it and the market reacts and the market's just not willing to pay the price that you had set for a goal, is there an option to keep the home and defer your selling plans to later in the future, or possibly rent the property in the meantime to offset cash flow? That's very important. If it's not an option, well, then the goal is, if we have a market that potentially, due to oversupply, has potentially negative pressure on prices, well, then we want to get you down to the price where a deal is going to happen sooner rather than later. Reason being is your neighbor that's going out there and you're competing against, that's going to sell their property, they may have different circumstances. Their motivation to get the deal done may be greater than yours. Hence, it sets up a situation where your neighbors could potentially give away your equity. So we want to capture as much equity as quickly as possible. On the buy side, there's really an opportunity window here for buyers. As options grow, that leverage shifts to the buyer side of the table. You have options, so there's potential to get a better price for a property and negotiate better terms for properties right now. The magic question, or the crystal ball question, is how long is this opportunity window going to prevail? Is it going to be like COVID? You think back to March 16th, 2020, when we went into lockdown. That window was relatively short, lasted about a quarter, maybe a little bit more than a quarter, and then the market took off again. Different circumstances at that point in time period. Or we could look at really the transition between Q1 and Q2 of 2022, when the Fed raised rates the highest or the fastest ever in history. That transition period took really the rest of the year. The market kind of bottomed out and started recovering at the beginning of 2023. So anyways, that's what's going on. Uncertainty, lack of confidence affecting the demand side of the equation. Opportunity out there for buyers, sellers. Can you keep the home? Otherwise, you want to be strategic and quick in your sale. Again, I'm Tim Allen with Massey Allen Group at Compass. Have a great week. We'll see you next quarter.